Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to day 5 of CSW Group's Future Proof Your Career series of webinars. This is the 5th and final day and we'll take the format of a Q&A panel. Our panel of career development consultants will do their best to answer any questions you have. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Ollie and Barnaby. So Ollie and Barnaby are two of our career development consultants. Like I say, they're going to do their best to answer any questions that have arisen over this week. So we've got a series of questions that have been asked during the series of webinars this week. But if you've got other questions you want to ask during this session, then please just put them into the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. So let's kick off with our first question. The first question is, when I have finished my GCSEs in year 11, when is the earliest date that I can start an apprenticeship? So should we go to Ollie? Do you want to answer this question?
Yeah, thanks, David. Okay, so I mean, for those of you who have been in year 11 this year, this is sort of something that's already happened, because what the law tells us is that the date on which you can legally start work is the day after the last Friday in June of year 11. Okay, so what that means is, for those of you who are in year 11 now, you've all officially left education. Even if you've got friends in year 10 or younger years that are still carrying on their studies, all of you have officially left. So for those of you maybe in year 10 or in younger year groups, this is quite important if maybe your post-16 plans involve doing something like an apprenticeship, because when you get to the end of year 11, even if you find an employer that would love you to start work maybe in May, for example, or even if all of your exams had finished by that point, what the law says is that you cannot start working for them until after that last Friday in June. So that is important both for you, but it also protects them too.
Thanks, Ollie, that's great. Okay, next question. Who do I speak to if I find it hard to get a job because I'm anxious, I lack confidence, that kind of thing? Barnaby, I don't know, do you want to pick that one up?
Yes, certainly, David. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar. I think, first of all, it's important to acknowledge that when it comes to looking for work, lack of confidence can affect many people, and it's a natural reaction, you know, because I think it's sort of the nerves, social anxiety, particularly around looking for an employment and dealing with an interview. They are natural reactions. I think it's partly, Ollie may well agree, it's partly how you can look to overcome those anxieties and that lack of confidence, and that will come from, you know, experience. I would certainly think, in terms of who you can speak to, obviously, I would, not promoting us, CSW advisors will be able to give you advice on interview techniques and what you can expect from an interview, type of questions that you might be asked, and how you might you know, build up a sort of a bank of answers to help you answer them in interviews and you know, and in further interviews you might have. And I believe we might touch on that in one of our later questions. There are other agencies you can I'm sure that you can speak to in your local area. Certainly within Cornwall, we've got agencies such as, you know, Pentreath and Young People Cornwall, who can help people address anxiety issues and can offer support, I think, and also help you to drill down and get to grips with maybe which aspect of the anxiety or the interview nerves you are struggling with the most, I would say. But I think the important thing is, if you do feel anxious about interviews, you are not alone. And it's about looking at what potential jobs are available and what matches your skill set, and look at what might be, you know, appropriate options for you.
Yeah, I would, if I can come in, I totally agree with everything Barnaby said. Yeah, anxiety, it's an ordinary human emotion on one level, and we all experience it, and that's normal. I think every person who's ever had a job interview will have experienced that. I think I agree with Barnaby that it is important, though, to be open to accessing sources of support if you need that. I mean, Barnaby mentioned some of the services available in Cornwall, which is one of our main, you know, coverage areas in CSW, but there are national agencies that you can contact, things like Young Minds or Childline. There may be sources of support within your school or via your GP that might be appropriate, depending on the situation and what kind of anxiety we're talking about. I think the most important thing really is to talk to somebody, because if the anxiety is what you're experiencing is the biggest block in finding employment, then it's absolutely appropriate to kind of look at that properly and tackle that first.
Thanks, guys. And I was just going to add that there's also a website called www.kooth.com that is kind of an online mental well-being community. So that may well be a place to have a look. But yeah, certainly I think everyone experiences anxiety around job interviews, maybe doing presentations, that kind of thing. I know I certainly do, and I kind of try not to let that cripple me, but what I do, I use that energy to try and it makes me prepare really, really well, and I think that's the key is preparation for doing a presentation or an interview. If you use that energy to help you kind of prepare as well as possible, then hopefully that will get you through it. But yeah, it's certainly something to consider. Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on to question 3. Okay, so this is a very, very topical question. How has COVID-19 affected the job market? Will I be able to find a job or apprenticeship easily? Who wants to take this one? Barnaby or Ollie?
Can I start with that one?
Yeah. Go for it, Ollie. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that is a very pertinent and topical question, isn't it? Because obviously the principal impact of COVID-19 very tragically has been on health, and people have lost their lives, which is the first concern. But the sort of secondary knock-on impact of all this has been on our economy, because our whole economy has had to, or most of it's had to stop. And that has led to businesses having to shed staff because their income hasn't been what it was. And it has impacted a lot of the opportunities that young people would typically access, things like apprenticeships. So at one point this year, the number of apprenticeship starts had dropped by about 80% on the previous year. So that sounds quite drastic and maybe a little bit alarming, especially if that was what you intended to do this year. It doesn't mean that there are no jobs, and it certainly doesn't mean that there are no apprenticeships. I checked to see how many apprenticeships were available nationally on the government's Find an Apprenticeship website yesterday, and there were still over 5,600. That's lower than it would be normally, but there are still sectors recruiting. So I think, how has it impacted the economy? It's impacted some sectors a bit more than others. I know that hospitality, tourism, catering have taken a bit of a hammering. And some of the young people out there who may have wanted to get apprenticeships in those sectors may be finding that tricky at the moment, or might even be finding that they've lost their work. By the same token, some sectors, it might be an exaggeration to say they've thrived as they normally would, but they've been far, far less impacted. So you would still see a lot of vacancies in healthcare, social care, because a lot of kind of key work and essential work has been happening in those areas. As well as that, you can find a lot of ICT roles or ICT-based roles out there, which can operate perfectly happily from home. Technology, like the technology we're using right now to broadcast and record this webinar, can be used to perform tasks and still perform a job. So it really does depend. I think what I'd say to anybody who's very worried about this is do look at your backup plans. Some of you who want to do apprenticeships may need to look at college as a sort of a holding option or as a plan B to gain more qualifications, to gain relevant experience, and wait this out a little bit until things improve, because it won't be like this forever. Some of you may remember 10 or 12 years ago, maybe when you were very young actually, we went through a different kind of crisis, but it had a similar impact. We went through an economic crisis, and we were talking about similar sort of issues back then, I guess. But yeah, plan B, have a backup plan, talk to people, and if you have access to a careers advisor, I highly, highly recommend doing that.
Thanks, Ollie. Yeah.
Sorry, Dave. On the back of that, emphasize that I think there will be jobs available, whether it will be your first choice or your current career aspiration. I think you might have to look and see what is available. Look what is available. I think it'll also highlight the importance of transferable skills. What skills have I got? What can I offer to maybe a different role than the one that I was looking for? And I think, as Ollie suggested, this is where careers guidance will be important to all of you, because it'll give you the opportunity who can help you make informed decisions about how the future might look for you. Because at the moment, it's a bit of an unknown, locally, nationally, and globally to an extent. And so, you sort of crystal ball in one sense, thinking about how the future will look. But yeah, there will be options, and as just to back up Ollie's point, a plan B is vital in the current climate.
Thanks, Barnaby. And can I also say, Plan B is just so important. We've said it 3 times now, so hopefully that emphasises how important we think it is. Just to add, I think the other thing is just to keep an eye on what the government are doing. Especially, they're talking about job offers for young people, and some support around kind of apprenticeships, traineeships, that kind of thing. So I think it's important to keep an eye on what the government's response is as well, because that may well provide some other options that weren't available sort of previously. Okay, thanks guys. So let's move on to the next question. So we had someone saying that they're worried that their GCSEs are going to be assessed as a lot lower than if they'd sat the exams, and wondering what can they do if their chosen 5 GCSEs course needs grade 4 and above, but they don't get this because of the assessment that they receive for their GCSEs. Barnaby, can you help with that question?
Well, I mean, I will try. I think first of all, I know Ollie highlighted it at the start of the webinar, but I think this is in unprecedented times. This is a unique year for all GCSE students, which I'm sure doesn't offer any comfort, because they would probably have liked it to have been as straightforward as possible, finished their year 11 and sat their exams as they intended. I would say that in terms of the process, as I understand it, your school or college will be asked to send your exam board 2 pieces of information for each of your subjects, based on what they know about your work and achievements, the grade they believed you were likely to get if teaching, learning and exams had happened as planned. Within each subject, the order at your school or college by performance for each grade, this information will be to standardised judgments, allowing for tuning of the standard applied across the schools and colleges. So I'd hope in one sense that the grade that you were awarded, you will feel is a merit of what you've done, because it should be based on the work you have done up to and including the time that the lockdown occurred, or with the COVID-19, with the impact of COVID-19. So I think, in terms of the second part of the question, in terms of chosen 5 GCSEs, you do not get this. It's probably going to be worth having a conversation with your post-16 provider and finding out what the options will be, because they may well choose to, and I can't speak for the colleges and training providers, they may well be making allowances or having these discussions with you to talk about what the options might be and how they will move forward in the environment, which I guess is as new to them as it is to us.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very, very true. And I think what this the way that exams are being assessed this year, I think what it's sort of done is it's put into the foreground something which is kind of always an issue in a way, which is the fear or the anxiety that, well, what will happen if I don't get the grades that I'm being told I will need to do whatever it is, to do either A levels or a BTEC, or these days a T level, or maybe the apprenticeship that I want to do. There is more uncertainty than usual. I think I rather suspect some people will find that their grades are a wee bit higher than they're expecting, and it might be the reverse for other people. There are lots of factors, and I think we're in unknown territory, but I'd reiterate what Barnaby said. Whatever your grades are, there will be options for you, okay? That may include spending an extra year in sixth form or college to rebuild grades, if that's possible. So, as one example, quite a common thing is that if, say, you wanted to do a level 3 BTEC, let's say if it was that kind of course, and you just missed out on the grades you would typically need, then quite often colleges in the past have offered like the level 2 course, and then as long as you progress through obtained the maths and English you needed, got a merit or a distinction, then you would progress to level 3. If you miss out on what you need for A levels, that might mean that you need to look at something more vocational, possibly. But whatever it is, there will be an option. And I would also say this might seem a little bit a long way off, but learning is for life now. We're talking, often we talk about careers like we leave school, leave education, do a job, do more or less the same job for 40 years or whatever, and then retire. And in a few sectors that might still be true, but more people nowadays will go through multiple job changes. Look at the COVID situation. That's probably happening to a lot of adults that you know. And some of them might be able to find similar work. Others might need to take their skills, their transferable skills, reallocate them elsewhere, or even retrain. So you will have lots of opportunities in your life to gain skills, to go back to learning if you need to do that. All you can possibly do is to do your best. And I would say if you find that your grades are not what you were hoping for, please, use your careers advisor if you've got one, whether that's a CSW advisor if we're in your school, or if it's another kind of careers service, or if nothing else, there's the National Careers Service, 0800 100 900. I think they normally put on some extra support for those who are outside the southwest area. But it might mean your plans change, but it doesn't mean that there's no future for you. There definitely will be, and there'll be lots of help for you to work out what the right next step is.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. That's really good. And we've had a question come in, so I think let's have a crack at answering that one. So Freya's writing: is it still worth getting work experience later on this year if it was already cancelled? I don't know what year Freya's in, but yeah, I don't know if you guys can help with that question.
Sorry, Barnaby, do you want to start?
I mean, as again, we don't know what age Freya is. I think, in terms of developing your skill set, I think if you're able to secure work experience, I think it's hugely beneficial, because it gives you an idea of the world of work, employer expectations, what it feels like to get up and do a day's work, for want of a better phrase, so that you understand and can see, what it like. And some people choose work experience because it's a career they're interested in. Some people choose to go and work experience because, they're given the opportunity by a family member. Would you like to come and help out at our, in our shop, cafe, restaurant, whatever? So I think, work experience is invaluable in terms of preparing you for the future. Even if at the end of it, you decide that it's not something you've enjoyed, and you can rule that out as a future career option.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's really important, just knowing what you don't like doing as much as what you do like doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is. Yeah, I'd agree with what both David and Barnaby said. I'd say once it is safe to do so, yeah, absolutely try and get some work experience. I mean, even for those of you, I think probably people who are watching this will have lots and lots of different future plans. Some will be thinking about college, they might be thinking about apprenticeships or university. Whatever you want to do, employers do want to see some kind of evidence of work experience, or also evidence of extracurricular activities. So like whatever you choose to go on to do next, Freya, if you can get involved in hobbies, sports, societies, take on positions of responsibility, volunteer if you can. All of these are things which give us the chance to practice what we've been mentioning it several times now, transferable skills. So it's a skill I developed in one context, which is then useful in lots and lots of other things. The skill of working as part of a team could be learned in a workplace, could be learned in school, could be learned as part of a sports team, but it's still the same skill. And the key to, finding work on the basis of this is just knowing how to translate this into the employer's language, because eventually, when we've all been through our education, whatever route we choose, that's what we face. So it's an unusual time for work experience, isn't it? But yeah, I'd say if you can in the future, definitely try and do it, but also try and understand the value of all the other things that you're doing as well.
Absolutely. Great, that's brilliant. Thank you for that. And Freya, thanks very much for that question. It's really good. Okay, moving on to the next question we were asked during the week. So It says, I have been working with YOTS, that's the youth offending team, for something that happened a little while ago. I really want to get an apprenticeship, but I'm worried about how this incident will affect my job prospects. Do I have to disclose this information to my potential employers? If so, when and how? Ollie, can you pick that one up for us?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There is a kind of a system in this country for understanding if you have, a conviction, how do you have to disclose it, and if so, how? So one thing that we've got is a system called filtering. So depending, if you're doing a job that needs a disclosure and barring service check, so some jobs explicitly say that because of the type of work you're doing, there needs to be some kind of check to see if you've committed an offence that would make you inappropriate for that job. Some kind of convictions are judged to be not sufficiently severe to need to be checked in those checks. But it does depend on the work. So if, for example, you wanted to do a job with maybe vulnerable people or children, or if it was working with financial information, probably, anything that was an offence would need to be, would certainly kind of come up on the check and would need to be disclosed. Other than that, I think I would say, first of all, check to see whether your offence needs to be disclosed in other contexts. So there is a website called Unlocked, which has got lots and lots of useful information. And it will tell you which offences don't need to be disclosed, which ones always need to be disclosed. And some offences, there is a time period. And after that time period, it's then spent. So while it's unspent, you do need to disclose it to your employer. After that point, then you no longer need to. But again, it sometimes depends on the work. If you do find yourself in a situation where you need to explain this, it's worth spending a bit of time before you fill in a job application or before you go to a job interview, thinking about how you're going to talk about that. Because I think it is, it is, if it's going to come up anyway, it's going to look better if you can offer the information. It may be, for example, that whatever it was you did happened at a specific point in your life when there was something difficult going on for you, and that you have learned from it and that you're in a different place. So you would need to think about how you're going to explain that to an employer and how you can do whatever you can to assure them that you're perhaps a different person now in a different situation. There is information on the Unlocked website about ways in which you can do this, whether it's as part of your application or whether you would choose to do it in the interview. But if you take control of that, then you're sort of taking control of the message. And I would suggest it would look better for you if you can you take the initiative in offering the information rather than not mentioning it and then waiting for the employer to find out about it. I can't guarantee to you that that would mean that they would offer you a job. But the other thing I would add is that there are employers out there who explicitly have a positive policy about recruiting people who've had offences. And one that is quite famous is the employer Timpsons. You often see Timpsons outside supermarkets. They repair watches, they make belts, they do lots of little sort of technical and fiddly tasks like that. Unlocked have got other resources where you can find employers with a similarly positive policy in that regard. So it is a tricky area. It's probably one that you need to take some advice on, but I hope that kind of highlights a few of the important things there. I don't know if you want to come in on this, Barnaby, at all. If there's anything you want to add?
No, I think you've covered it very thoroughly. I'm also aware that we're quite pushed for time. We've got a couple more questions to get through. So
okay, let's crack on.
We can go over. It's all right.
Okay, sorry. No, okay, no, I don't. No, I think it's good. Sorry.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Ollie. Thanks, Barnaby. Okay, so the next question was, what type of questions should my child expect during an interview? Has it changed much for them, or are similar questions still asked? And are there particular interview styles we should be more prepared for? Barnaby, do you want to pick that one up?
Well, we alluded to interviews in question 2, and I think the key thing is that in all times first thing is to be prepared. Usually you look to complete an application form for a job, and I think it's important that you remember what you have put in the application, so that when asked, you will be able to discuss it with some authority. There are many different types of interviews. there's the sort of what we refer to as the traditional interview, where you will sit down with an interviewer and they will ask you a set list of questions and expect responses from you. Certainly, in the current climate we're operating in, there are telephone interviews and video conferencing interviews, which are slightly different because you don't get to, a bit like today, you don't get to meet us in person. So that's a slightly different type of engagement you have. You may attend panel interviews where there may be 3 members of staff, and they might ask you 3 different questions. So you're then presenting, in a sense, for 3 different people. You may also be asked to complete, it might be what we could do as a working interview. You might be asked to complete a task as part of the interview to see how you operate in the work environment. Or there might be group interviews. I've attended group interviews in the past where you work with a number of other applicants to see how you work as a team and to see how you operate and how you would work with others should you be given the opportunity. In terms of questions, there are normally what we refer to as the classic interview questions. Tell us about yourself, why have you applied for the post, or those sort of things. There also might be career goal type questions. What motivates you? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, for example? Those type of things. They might ask you something about your character. What are your core values? Who do you admire? There can also be, and these are quite common, there's normally what they're referred to as competency questions or scenario-based ones. An example of this could be, can you tell me when you work to a deadline and prioritize the number of tasks? So it's the idea, so there's a sort of, this is the situation, what did you do, what action you took, and what was the result of that action? So it's nice to be able to have in interviews sometimes prepared examples of things that you've done. Sometimes they might ask you a sort of a curveball or unusual question, I guess, and this is not necessarily too unusual, but if you're an animal, what sort of animal would you be? Those kind of things. So the interview structures haven't necessarily changed as such, and the questions they might ask you might not have changed over the years, but preparation is the key. And on the back of that, it's also important that you take the opportunity to ask your interviewer questions, so that you can then, it's nice to have some prepared ones, so that possibly it shows you've interested and done some research in your prospective employer, and also it takes the focus off you for a few moments during the interview and gives them an opportunity to ask them something, I would say. So yeah.
Thanks, Barnaby. That's great, thank you. I heard on a podcast that some employers are developing kind of like computer games that they would ask prospective candidates to do that then test them on certain skills. Ollie, have you heard that, and do you know any more about that?
Yeah, that's called gamification, and it's used by kind of larger employers rather than smaller or medium-sized employers. But you might get that certainly in kind of graduate level jobs, but even some of the kind of even apprenticeships with larger employers. So that might be a thing, because it still gives them information about like your thinking skills, your kind of lateral thinking skills, stuff like that. In terms of interview questions, yeah, I mean, I think Barnaby covered just about everything there. The only extra thing I might be able to think of is what we call the strengths-based question, which is rather than asking for an example from the past when you've demonstrated the competency being looked for, it might be something like, what is it that energizes you? And these kind of fit, something a bit like that, just to really kind of get to the nub of what sort of person you are. And these are, in a way, kind of harder to prepare for, but you can use that, what's called the STAR technique that Barnaby just went through: the situation, when it was, the task that you had to do, the action you took, and the result of it. You could sort of use that to model a response to those strengths-based questions too. Good website that has examples of different kinds of interview techniques is prospects.ac.uk. Although it's supposed to be a graduate careers website, the actual information about interviews there is very, very thorough, and I'd recommend going and having a look at that.
Brilliant, thanks, Ollie. And just linking it back to the earlier question about sort of anxiety and that kind of thing, use that anxiety before and during to really kind of help you prepare thoroughly and show your kind of enthusiasm and passion for that job, because that'll go a long way with employers if you show kind of enthusiasm and passion, I think. So Great. Thanks, guys. Okay, so the last question that's come through during the week. So this is an interesting one. So someone's asking, do employers really look at social media profiles when recruiting? Ollie, do you want to pick this one up?
Yes, they do. That's the simple answer. Employers are interested in the things that they would expect us to be interested in. So they would look at basic things like, are you of the minimum qualification level? Are you able in your application and in the interview or at an assessment centre? Are you able to demonstrate the skills, competencies, personal qualities thereafter? But we also have to remember that all employers have got like a public face. They have got an image. They want, it's a brand, if you like. They want people to have a positive understanding of their brand and the people who work for them. And therefore, they will not take kindly to anything posted on your, whether it's your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or whatever platform you happen to use, that is inappropriate, offensive, silly, and that might then one day be noticed by somebody who then forms a negative association with them. So it's a long established fact that employers will use this. They will use this as part of their checking process. And people have lost their jobs because of things that they have posted on social media whilst in employment. So so basically, remember that anything you put on the internet is there probably forever. Yeah. So if you're not sure that it's something that is going to be reflecting badly on you at one point, just don't put it on there in the first place. Really get to know your privacy settings. If you don't understand the privacy settings of a platform, then don't use it. Do remember also that there is a positive spin on social media these days, because a lot of employers will use it to recruit. They will use famously a platform called LinkedIn. So one day, if you haven't done so already, should all of you create a LinkedIn profile, because that's an actual professional networking site. It's got like an online CV. You can reach out to employers you want to do work experience with, that kind of thing, but you'll see jobs posted there too. But I've seen them on Facebook, I've seen them on Twitter. So any platform you use kind of works both ways. You've got to think of yourself as having a brand, like a personal brand. You've got to worry about how you come across. You've got to worry about, how appealing might anything you do be to an employer or not. But also it can these days be a very, very useful tool, just like searching on the internet or opening a newspaper and going to the job section for finding employment, and also for networking as well these days.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ollie. Barnaby, I don't know, do you have anything to add to that one?
Firstly, I'd like to just apologise for the technical issues that happened there.
That's okay.
I also was going to, Ollie's absolutely spot on. I was also going to mention, when you talk about branding, that yes, it's how you want to present yourself to future employers who will look, and that's something that's changed since the advent of social media, and putting your digital footprint can extend way beyond maybe where you think it will go. So I think it's be careful. I know they say it a lot of the time, but just think, when you click that button, where is it going, and who may be able to access it.
Yeah. I guess it's controlling your own social media, but maybe, I don't know, what your friends post about you and tag you in, or and maybe even how you behave. Because if someone videos you doing something inappropriate and that gets on the internet, then an employer picks up on that. Maybe that could have implications as well. So yeah, it's something to be kind of mindful of. Definitely. Okay, that's really good. Thanks, guys. That's brilliant. So, that's the end of the questions. I don't know if any of our attendees have any further follow-up questions they'd like to ask, or if Ollie and Barnaby, there's anything else that you would like to kind of add before we wrap up?
No, only that for those in attendance, once we end this webinar, there will be a feedback questionnaire. I'd be very grateful if you could please answer that. Other than that, all of these webinars will be uploaded to CSW Group's YouTube channel. So if you know of people who weren't able to attend today, they will be uploaded there, and we'll keep them there for anyone to access as a resource.
Fantastic. Once again, thanks, Ollie and Barnaby. It's been really interesting. Thanks everyone for attending, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.